Good morning. This is Jason Dean at YouTube and Jason Dean, Film Fanatic. If you get a chance, like and subscribe to my page. I really appreciate it. Thanks again for people chiming in and checking out the page. You know, a lot of the videos have been getting a lot of hits, so it's been a lot of fun. I feel like there's enough of an interest to keep going for this page and to keep uploading videos. I've been watching a ton of movies lately, and it's been a lot of fun. And I'm constantly learning. I have new things coming up that I'm going to be working on. One of the things I'm going to be doing is trying to focus a little bit more on the production side for this channel. So that's going to be something that will be happening. I also have two big interviews coming up, which I'm really excited. One of the things that I enjoy the most, and I've only done it twice for Film Fanatic, I I've done a couple interviews with some folks. I did one way back when with Lydia Manson, who is an actress in the kind of indie horror world, and that was super fun. It was really interesting to have somebody on the show who was actually an actress, a working actress in the industry, and it opened up a whole new kind of perspective for me as far as learning about that. And then I also had a really great friend, Sean Russell, on the show, who is, well, he really played a big role in when I was younger, as far as he turned me on to a lot of films when I met him at college. We became great friends since then, and he really turned me on to a lot of great films and a lot of great directors, and kind of started this whole obsession quite a few years ago, and got me into collecting movies in a lot of ways. And he also has has a real extensive background with film score stuff. He's worked on a lot of documentaries and TV shows. One of the bigger shows he worked on was Vice. Uh, but he has a lot of experience in film doing soundtracks and those kinds of things. So we did a show, and that was super fun. And I noticed, like, when I did those shows, like, the hits were really big, and the the views were great, and I got a lot of attention for those videos, and I really enjoyed that. I really like having that person with a different perspective and from a varied background, and very interesting. And I learned a lot through doing that. So that's one of the things I really want to focus on moving forward with this page, is to try to do more interviews. So I have two more coming up. One that's going to be coming up really soon. I think we're going to be filming it this weekend with my friend Emmett Layler, who I play music with, and he's a really great friend, super talented guy. One of the most talented people that I get a chance to play music with. He's a really great friend. I've known him forever, and he's really into film. It's really funny. I remember it was probably about 4 years ago. We like, I've known him for, I used to work at this restaurant years ago, Fitzpatrick's in Camden, Maine. I worked there for about 10 years, and Emmett worked there as a little kid. It was like his first job that he ever had, because his dad, Jack, has Camden Jewelry, which is a jewelry shop in town. So his dad used to come in every day for lunch or breakfast. So he got his sons to start working there, and it was Emmett and his brother Crockett. And Emmett started working there when he was like super young. So I knew him then. That's when I first met him. And then Crockett, his younger brother, started working there. And then years and years later, uh, you know, he got into playing guitar, and then I was, trying to put together this wacky music career that I have. And years and years later, he moved away. He moved to Florida for quite a few years, and got going pretty hot and heavy into playing in bands. And he was really fortunate to play in a few bands in Florida that with these musicians that were really very talented. And he also had a lot of great opportunities and a lot of great experiences from playing down there. And then he eventually moved back, and I hadn't seen him in years. And then we we ended up playing like in this totally unplanned scenario where he was for I think it was like 3 or 4 years he was running an open mic at Rock Harbor in Rockland, and then he had been running it and it had been a successful thing. He was doing it for like again, like I said, 3 or 4 years, and he was doing it like every Wednesday. And then eventually, the first couple of years after he was doing that, he started to try to bring in music, like book bands inside, and have these various, bands that he was playing with, but then other configurations. And I remember it was like on a Thursday or something where they had a band in Rock Harbor that was scheduled to play on a Friday, and they canceled. So it was totally last minute, and I remember Emmett called me about if would I be interested in playing drums with him at Rock Harbor to fill in this space. So I jumped at the chance and we did it, and then that's how the Mullet Makers started. And I remember that whole scenario because it was like totally crash course. We never played in a band together. We had known each other, but we never played music together. And I knew he was. I'd seen him play before that at this open mic that I used to go to, and eventually I was part of the band. And I was really blown away by how great he was. He came back kind of this. He became like this monster when he was down in Florida. So I was like, yeah, definitely, let's do it. And we ended up playing, and we had no, it was totally seat of our pants. He was just kind of calling cover tunes, kind of left and right, and, with no rehearsal. And I remember like 5 or 3 minutes before we were going to play, he's like, I remember he turned back to me and he's like, okay, what are we going to call our band? What should we call ourselves? And the idea, the image I had in my head, or the idea I had, was the Mullet Makers. I was like, oh, the Mullet Makers. And then he introduced the band as the Mullet Makers, and it stuck with the band for quite a few years, and it was really funny, and it just kind of progressed to where, now we're in a band, and we've been playing music now for about 5 years, 4 or 5 years, and it's been great. It's been a lot of fun. But like typically during that time, like we would play gigs, and we started playing gigs quite a bit. And we hang out afterwards, and and then go about our separate ways. And I remember it was probably like 3 years ago, it was probably 3 or 4 years ago, probably closer to 3 years ago. I think we were playing a gig somewhere with the Mullet Makers. We were playing a gig somewhere at a festival or something, some place where it was like a couple hours away. And Emmett lives in Camden, and we came back to Camden, and the gig was done on the earlier side. We were back in town like around 8 or 9 o'clock at night, and Emmett had asked me, "Hey, do you want to go out to Cuzzy's for a beer?" And Cuzzy's is a bar that's like directly across from where he lives. So I was like, "Yeah, let's do it." And so we went out for some beers, and it was like summertime, so the place was packed. There was a lot of people there, and the weather was nice. So we went there and had a couple of beers, and we started talking about movies or books or something. And he started talking about Stephen King, and then I was talking about movies that I had seen. And and I didn't realize, like, that's when I started to realize, like, he was way into horror movies, and he was like, super knowledgeable about a lot of films, and particularly horror films, and he was mostly like focused, or knew most about everything kind of related to Stephen King. So we had this like new kind of friendship that happened after that. Like we had all of these things in common, and similar, and a real similar love and passion about horror and movies. So ever since then, like, we started to like go to the movies together, and it was a great, cool experience. And ever since then, it's been this whole big thing that we have, where we've gone to a lot of movies together, and we watch movies together I go to his place, and we watch movies together, and so it's been really cool. But anyway, he's going to be on the show. He's going to be a guest on the show, and we're going to do a show that's going to be kind of focused on the career of Stephen King. So that's going to be a lot of fun. And we the other night we were talking about kind of brainstorming about different things that we could talk about, like his books or his short stories, and then obviously his movies or the adaptations of his movies, and then all of the newer streaming TV shows that are out now based on his work. So we kind of throw out some titles of certain films and those kinds of things. And when I was going through that stuff and thinking of ideas on my own about different films or what we could do for the show, I usually like to keep the structure for the interviews relatively loose and try to keep it open to where it could go into different directions. But I try to have it focused on a couple of key points that we could tackle. But after that, I like to have the show, or at least the shows that I've done and shows that I want to do in the future, keep them a little bit more open so they can go into different areas. But when I was doing like some kind of research and looking up the films of Stephen King, and I've seen a lot of them, there's a lot I have seen, probably most of them to a degree. I was but a lot I hadn't seen in many years, and I was just blown away by how many there were. So it's just like, wow, like there's so many films. So that's going to be interesting. And I'm super excited about that. So we're going to do that this weekend and do a live video interview and talk, you know, all things related to Stephen King and probably a few other things. So that will be a lot of fun. And then I'll put that up on YouTube channel and share it around and all those good things. And then the other interview I'm going to be doing, which will be coming up at the end of this month, which I'm super excited, is I'm going to have an actress who was involved with, she was an actress in Friday the 13th, I believe it's part 6, A New Beginning. I did a big show on this page about the entire Friday the 13th franchise, so I covered every movie related to that whole mythology. So I had this idea since my brain was in that world for like 2 or 3 weeks, 24/7. I thought, well, maybe try to do something special to kind of cap it all off. And so then I had this idea of maybe if I could get in contact with somebody who was actually involved with the franchise, that would be really cool and maybe a special way to kind of mark it off. And I was able to get in contact with an actress who was in Friday the 13th Part 6, A New Beginning. So that's going to be happening in at the end of the month. I think it's going to be right after Halloween, so probably like in like early November. So I'm going to have her on the show, and we're going to just talk about all things related to that, as far as what that experience was like and how it's helped her career, all those things. So I'm really excited about that. So that'll be a lot of fun. So stay tuned for that show. So this brings me to this show. The great and amazing, the iconic film director, David Cronenberg. This is a movie of his that I have never seen before, Shivers. This was his first film that he directed in 1975. David Cronenberg is, legendary, just a legendary director. He's definitely one of my favorites. He's had a career that, he just recently, this came out in 75, so he's been putting movies out for close to 50 years, which is amazing, and he's so prolific. He kind of invented the term, which is you hear a lot about, called body horror, which is basically where, he used a lot of practical effects in a lot of his films that involve like horror movies where there's a lot of body horror, where there's heads exploding or creatures coming out of people's bodies, and they tend to be pretty gory and brutal, but it's kind of centered around the characters' bodies, the body application. And so there's like this term called body horror that kind of came out of that. The list of films that he's done is just staggering. Like it's wild. the first film I think I saw of his was The Fly, which came out in 1986 with Jeff Goldblum, which was an adaptation of the Vincent Price movie. I think The Fly, that was definitely the first Cronenberg movie I'd ever seen. That movie is still terrifying and way ahead of its day. It's just an incredible movie. Another movie he did that I think is just an amazing movie, and also something I'd love to see again and do a show on, is Dead Ringers with Jeremy Irons. That's an incredible movie. Probably my favorite. It's so hard to say, but probably my favorite Cronenberg movie is Scanners, which came out in 1981. That movie is just bonkers. I love that film so much. Videodrome, another one, just an amazing film. Uh, yeah, that's another movie I haven't seen in a super long time, but that's an incredible movie. The other one that's really great, speaking of Stephen King, which I'll probably cover in this upcoming show with Emmett, is The Dead Zone with Christopher Walken. That's a freaking awesome movie. I got the collector's edition of that movie pretty recently on Blu-ray, and I'm going to do a show on that eventually. But that's such an incredible movie. Um, The Brood is another one that he did in 1979, one of the more old school ones. That's an incredible movie. Um, just an amazing track record as a director. He's also like been an actor in a lot of films. He was in Nightbreed. He was in Jason X. He's been in a few movies, which is pretty hilarious. Another movie that he did that was fairly recent was Eastern Promises. Just an amazing movie. Rabid, which was a movie he did in 1977, which I believe is a movie I've never seen. Um, in this movie here, Shivers, I had never seen this movie. A friend of mine had posted, my friend Charlie Hendrick, who I've talked a lot about, who was a real big, it was basically the two guys, two friends in my life that really uh, got me into film, or got me to get into film to the extent that I've gotten into, was Sean Russell and Charlie Hendrick. And I've talked about both of those guys quite a bit. But Charlie had done a post, I think it was last year, where he had just watched Shivers, and I had never seen this movie. And I was like, wow, I got to see this. And I don't think I've seen Rabid. That's the other one. I might have seen that, but I don't think I have. And that's from '77. And Shivers is a movie I definitely have never seen. And I didn't realize that this movie. So I bought it the other day, and it's a really amazing package. It's got a nice slip case. Artwork is awesome. It's a super low budget. I kind of like it. It feels like it fits into the grindhouse exploitation world, because it's like so low budget. It's super gritty and it's super raw, and it's pretty gruesome. It's pretty disturbing. The whole film is kind of centered on this idea that the scientist creates this parasite, that he felt this parasite could further science and help people by, if people, like, say, this develop some kind of failure, like maybe kidney failure or something, like a cellular failure in their body, there could be this parasite that could be created, if a certain organ fails or some kind of thing breaks down, they could put this parasite basically inside, and it could feed off of the body, but then also sustain the body at the same time. So the whole concept of that is centered on that, but obviously things get way out of control and completely sinister and twisted and completely disturbing. As Cronenberg, David Cronenberg has a real knack for gnarly violence in a lot of his films. A lot of his films are pretty graphic and gory. They're all in camera, and they're pretty bonkers. Like, and again, this was his first film. It came out in 1975, and before that, he did these two underground super uber low budget films that were kind of considered more like avant-garde or art house. And when he had this, there's a really great interview with him on the Blu-ray, and he was talking about when he had the script for Shivers, he was like proposing it to other companies, and he's Canadian. He was proposing it to other companies, to film companies, to try to get the backing and the financing. They were really worried, like if he was given this full, like, green light because of his background. They were like, I don't know how we could sell it. It's probably going to be just so incredibly strange and bizarre and deranged based on the other work that he had done. I don't know if there would be an audience for this. So he had problems trying to find the backing. But he eventually worked with this company in Canada that had only done softcore, like, porns that were basically softcore exploitation films, and they were pivotal in saying, well, we really love this script. Let's make this work. And so they financed Shivers, and the rest is history. I mean, he's gone on to become one of the most well regarded science fiction horror directors in the world. I mean, just amazing. And he also isn't strictly a horror director. I mean, a lot of his films have very much a science fiction kind of tinge to it, and he's done you know crime dramas. He did a film with Viggo Mortensen about Sigmund Freud. He's done lots of films that are a departure from the horror world, but he's got a certain style that it carries over in anything that he does. Just a tremendous movie. The Blu-ray transfer of this film is just amazing, and it's pretty squeamish. Like, it will make you. I think this film will definitely make you uncomfortable. It's all practical effects. It's super low budget, but it's amazing what you can really see. What even at such a young age, and being that this was his first feature, he had such a unique vision, and it was so utterly original. That's one of the things I love about David Cronenberg is his vision and his scope are just so utterly original. And he writes a lot of his own scripts, and he uses a lot of the same people. Even to this day, he the crew that he uses, people that work on his films, he's had those folks that have worked with him have this sense of loyalty to Cronenberg, so they've worked with him with him throughout his entire career, and they really put a lot of love and passion into all the films, and especially his early work when things were very low budget in the 70s and early 80s, and and now we live in the day of CGI. There isn't so much of the practical effects anymore, but Cronenberg has kept that a thing even in his modern in this more modern era. Like, one of the movies that I really love of his, which is not a horror movie, called History of Violence, which is with William Hurt, and it's a gangster movie, but it's such an awesome movie, and it's so incredibly violent and gory, and it's a fairly modern film for him, and it's such a great, fantastic movie, but it's all like kind of in camera, like, so everything that you're seeing was like shot and handcrafted, so it has this look that and this like tangibility to it that's just incredible. But yeah, I can't recommend this movie enough. Shivers, it's just amazing. I'd never seen this before, 1975, and you really, if you're a fan of his films, you should be, but or a fan of him as being a director. And I love his work, and I've been following him forever. I really see, like, I really got a sense of, like, wow, like, this is like his formative years. You can really see his style already on the big screen, and yeah, amazing. 1975, Shivers. So if you get a chance, please check this out. This is Jason Dean on YouTube. If you get a chance, like and subscribe to my page, and we'll talk to you soon. Peace.